All right, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to talk about Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence, and whether or not Manny Pacquiao thinks he's getting away with cherry picking or getting Errol Spence Jr. during a time of weakness. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get into the subject matter of the video, please make sure if you are not subscribed to subscribe to the channel. Also, like the video, share the video. It goes a really long way towards helping the channel grow, and it would be greatly appreciated. So we have a fight between Errol Spence Jr., who is the WBC and the IBF welterweight champion, and Manny Pacquiao, who is the WBA regular champion, but a lock for future Hall of Famer, somebody that has been in the professional ranks for a long time, has had a lot of really great battles, and is definitely what you would call a veteran in the game. Now, the subject matter of this video is pretty much a 800-pound gorilla in the room type of conversation, and that is, does Manny Pacquiao think that he is pretty much getting and taking advantage of Errol Spence Jr. and having Errol Spence Jr. be what people call in boxing a cherry pick, where somebody has a certain amount of weakness that you see in their game, and then you may not have fought them before until you see this weakness in their game. But when you see this weakness, then you feel like, okay, yeah, it's a good time to take advantage of it. So you kind of pick that cherry, and I think that this may be a situation where we're listening to Freddie Roach and listening to people in Manny Pacquiao's camp, that they think that this is, a situation for that, like where you could do that. Now, this is not something that I'm just saying out of, nothing. This is something that you can see in Manny Pacquiao's career, the way that Manny Pacquiao's career was developed, is that he has had a lot of fights with guys that have big names, that when you say, Manny Pacquiao versus this guy or Manny Pacquiao versus that guy, you get and you bring to your mind's eye, a picture of them when they're at their fullest and doing the best that they can absolutely do. Now, that, however, is not the case a lot of times. If you really look down Manny Pacquiao's resume, there's a lot of what you would call, cherry picking or taking people at the right times. Now, instead of saying cherry picking, you could say, good matchmaking. And that is pretty much what would describe it better, because you have people who work in boxing called matchmakers, who are looking and paying close attention to what's going on with fighters, and then matching them up, and to make sure that the fight is both entertaining and it's sellable, but at the same time it's winnable for their guy. So examples of Manny Pacquiao and taking advantage of very good matchmaking could be like the Antonio Margarito fight. Antonio Margarito is somebody that was knocking out a lot of people, was really, a destructive force in the 147-pound division. But then before he fought, right before the fight that he had with Shane Mosley, he gets caught with loaded gloves, and then he fights Shane Mosley and gets knocked out. After that, he gets beat up real bad by Miguel Cotto, and then after that, Manny Pacquiao fights him. So Manny Pacquiao, when you look back on his record, you say, oh, he beat Antonio Margarito, without thinking that, nah, he didn't really beat the Antonio Margarito. He beat a shell of the Antonio Margarito. The same thing could be said about his win over Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto was somebody that at 140 pounds was really doing a lot, but then he ran into Antonio Margarito with loaded gloves. And when he got hit in after having been damaged by Antonio Margarito with loaded gloves, Manny Pacquiao fought him, and it was a little bit easier for that damage had been done. And that was another opportunity, another example of matchmaking. So as you go on and you look at what's going on with Errol Spence Jr., I think that one of the reasons that they picked Errol Spence Jr. was because Errol Spence Jr. has been showing, could be considered to be showing weakness. He did matter of, and they point to that when they talk about the fight between the two. You have a fight between him pretty much with Mikey Garcia, right? With Mikey Garcia, he was fighting a guy that came up in weight, and he didn't particularly look, really, really strong in that fight, but he won the fight. But a lot of people were saying, hey, he should have demolished a guy that was coming up from 135 pounds up to 147 pounds, even though that's a little bit of a misnomer because he came from 140, but then he went back down to 135, then back up to 147. But that's what people were looking at. And then he had the Sean Porter fight. The Sean Porter was a battle. It was a very, very close fight, but one where again, Errol Spence Jr. took more punishment than people thought he was going to take, and it was a lot closer fight than people thought, or people thought that it would be, and he didn't get the knockout on Sean Porter. And then you go to the last fight that he had, Danny Garcia, where he dominated Danny Garcia and won pretty much every round. But again, he did not look like he was, somebody that was, running through. He wasn't like earlier in his career where he was running through people like Leonard Bondu and Chris Algieri and Chris Van Herden and all them, where it was like a wrecking ball. He didn't look as much as a wrecking ball as he looked like a boxer. So that, though, was a result of that. And in between those two fights was that big car accident. So to me, and so now Manny Pacquiao has decided to fight him after he again shows in like I said in the Danny Garcia fight that he wasn't. He didn't look like that killer that he looked like before. So this could be a good opportunity to matchmake Manny Pacquiao against Errol Spence Jr. in that last fight. But the reason that I think he's getting that wrong, though, is that Errol Spence Jr. was very honest and straightforward about what his problems were with the Mikey Garcia fight and the Sean Porter fight, and that he was really ballooning up in between in between fights, and his weight was got out of hand, and as a result, he wasn't really training to fight. He was pretty much just having fat camps. So the combination of that and the fact that he's now had one fight after that car accident very well could get him back up to, like Sean Porter said, 100%. Because in the Danny Garcia fight, according to I think it was Errol Spence Jr. has said himself that he was only at about 80%. So, but being a younger guy, he just touching his 30s, that he could recover from that and get all the way back to 100% against Manny Pacquiao is very realistic, very realistic. But I just wanted to talk about that because it seemed like this is definitely in the same mode or method of matchmaking that Manny Pacquiao's used in the past. But that's what I think about the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.